So this is our potential. If we want to have a shared vision, if we're feeling despair at the cruelty and we want to have a vision of what's possible, we can, this is the bodhisattva path that's in Buddhism, the path of the awakening being, we can begin to sense our belonging to everybody else. And then we want to take care of each other. So that's the possibility. And in order to wake up to that, we have to get how we get caught in the trance, where others become unreal. You know, how does it happen societally? Because this is what we're looking at. And how does it happen for each of us? And if we look at the evolutionary roots, and this is kind of a brief, it's very simplified, but millions and millions of years, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, and they lived in these little communities, and they were very far from each other, actually, small independent groups of hunter-gatherers, and they needed to have a high degree of in-group coherence and identification to survive. And they actually, the way that the perceptions went is other groups had names. They named them in ways that inferred they were less than human. Okay? So they had these epitaphs, and it meant that they were not feeling, thinking beings like they were. And as long as we do that, then we can go ahead and be aggressive and violate and take what we want. We can continue in that kind of a way of relating. Millions of years, deep in the primitive brain, okay? Unreal other, go ahead and attack. Then, 70,000 years ago, we had this like super acceleration in cognitive development. Some describe it as a cognitive revolution, where the frontal cortex just started like shooting off all these little networks. And really what that translated to was we developed the capacity for metacognition. We could step back and see the big picture. We could even see our thought patterns, and developed the capacity for compassion and empathy, which led to collaboration, which is what makes the human race actually the most dominant race on the planet. Collaboration, communication, and a sense of global interdependence. We're actually in touch with every other community on the globe. So this is the evolutionary trajectory, mutual belonging. And as we know, we have widening circles of belonging. You can see it in your own life. When your heart starts opening, you start caring more about more people that are different, more people that are in that wider circle. And as the brain develops, this frontal cortex with all its potentialities, we still have a strong, primitive reptilian and limbic brain that when it's overactivated, hijacks the system. Okay, so civilization's going towards this interdependency and a world where we have this capacity for compassion, and limbic hijacks happen. So as Gandhi said when he was asked, what do you think of Western civilization? His response, it would be a good idea. So let's look a little more at this capacity to experience belonging and this limbic activity of unreal othering. In each individual human life, like the species, it took us a while developing. As we develop in an individual lifetime, one of the first tasks is individuating and feeling separate. Like I'm an individual, separate human. Others are out there. We grow like that, and so it's completely natural, and we're rigged. It's natural for children when their needs aren't met to get grasping or get angry or to blame others. I mean, this is just the way we're rigged. One story: a boy announces proudly, I'm going to marry grandma. And the father gently says, son, you can't do that. Children don't marry their grandparents. He said, why not? You married my mom, so I'm going to marry yours. So this is just developmentally. There's that get back. I remember with my own son that if anything happened to him, like somebody pushed him, he had to push back twice as hard. There's some way that we developmentally kind of get into that selfness, and there's a bit of the unreal other there. It's natural to be self-centered when we're really young and not attuned to the realness of others. Another story I heard, a woman's driving a carpool, and when she goes to pick up one little boy, she notices that an older woman's hugging him before he goes to the car. So she asks if is that your grandmother? And the boy said, yep, she's come to visit for Christmas. And then the woman said, oh, where does she live? Little boy said, oh, she lives at the airport. Whenever we want to see her, we just go and pick her up there. My grandmother jokes, as you can tell, I'm preparing, right? So these are natural developmental processes. It's also natural when someone acts differently than we've been conditioned to experience people acting. If they act a way that seems strange in some way, that initially we get defensive and worried. I mean, we get alarmed. This is natural. And in yet another story, there's a church, a preacher is wired for sound with a lapel mic, but as he's speaking, he's kind of walking briskly around the platform. He's kind of jerking the mic cord as he goes. He's not really used to, being linked up that way, and he's also trying to make these real emphatic points about gospel and so on. So he's moving to one side, and then he gets wound up in the cord, and he kind of nearly trips, and then he jerks it again. Meanwhile, after this happens a bit, a little girl in the third pew leans towards her mom and she whispers, if he gets loose, will he hurt us? Finally, developmentally, and this is natural, we are rigged to have emotions so that if we feel assaulted or threatened or violated, that we want to protect ourselves. The other, we might say, okay, this is a real other, but it's a dangerous real other, and I'm going to protect myself. And I think often of Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who he described this that I thought so profoundly. He said, there is a story, fairly well known, about when the missionaries came to Africa. They had the Bible, and we, the natives, had the land. They said, let us pray. And we dutifully shut our eyes. When we opened them, why, they now had the land, and we had the Bible. Right? So humans can be manipulative, hurtful, and it's completely natural developmentally and appropriate that we would feel wary, and when we get threatened, we do what we can to protect ourselves. The question is this: can we have all this rigging to take care of ourselves, but still learn to see others as whole and real humans? Because if we can have our array of emotions and do what's appropriate to take care of ourselves, but not forget, in other words, not get cut off from our frontal cortex, stay integrated ourselves, we can begin to move this world towards more healing.